On the 2nd of August 1990, Iraqi troops invaded their neighbor Kuwait in what is largely considered the beginning of the Gulf War. The invasion followed years of tension between the nations over the cancellation of debt and alleged economic warfare. In only 2 days, the state of Kuwait was defeated and Iraq continued to occupy the country. Around 500 people were killed and the military apparatus of Kuwait largely destroyed. However, the underground resistance continued to fight their oppressors and on October 2nd, 1990, attempted to shoot down a Boeing 747 used by the Iraqi Republican Guard. This is the largely forgotten Kuwait 747 attempted shootdown incident. Iraqi troops descended onto Kuwait in early August, and after just 1 day of fighting, the majority of their military had been defeated. They were caught completely unprepared, and their forces were not ready despite concrete threats by Iraqi leaders. However, the people of Kuwait were not ready to accept the installed puppet government and formed an underground resistance movement. This movement included prominent faces such as Atib Fahad al-Ahmad, member of the al-Sabah ruling family and son of a high-ranking military officer who was killed on the first day of the invasion. Atib al-Fahad coordinated various car bombings and attacks on Iraqi military vehicles. With him was also famous engineer and inventor Saad Sharar, who rose to prominence for constructing remote-controlled car bombs and weapons using hobby RC electronics, which probably deserves a video all on its own. A month into the invasion, a member of the Lebanese community and friend of the local resistance got hold of a particularly interesting bit of information. A Boeing 747 would transport hundreds of Iraqi Republican Guard personnel from Kuwait airport to Baghdad. The date of departure would be October the 2nd, 4 p.m. Atib al-Fahad, who still had access to 9K-32 Strela 2 manpads, got the idea of downing this plane as a show of force, as well as to make the Iraqi Air Force troops relocate to a different airport. These shoulder-fired heat-seeking missiles can target aircrafts at low altitudes, and analysts view them as a threat to commercial aviation even to this day. And so, in early October of 1990, the members of the resistance cell moved the missiles from their resistance hub in Yarmouk to an abandoned construction site in Al-Faravanya, just north of Kuwait Airport. This location would give them a prime view for any plane taking off and heading north, which a plane headed for Baghdad would be doing. To transport the missiles, they used an old Ford truck, which would be following a regular Honda car as a decoy. Apparently, there even was a close call, as the Honda was briefly stopped for speeding, but ultimately they reached their destination safely and the missiles were brought to the roof of the construction site. As 4 p.m. came, they spotted the plane taking off and fired 2 missiles. The first one missed the plane, the second one hit. In the unstabilized footage it is difficult to see, but once we stabilized the plane to the center, we can not only make out a flame igniting on the right wing, but also that something broke off. It appears to be engine number 3, and I'll explain why in a moment. According to unreliable claims by the resistance, the plane crashed and everyone on board died. But as was later corrected, it did actually make a successful emergency landing in Basra. Whether or not the people on board were injured or killed is anyone's best guess, but what's impressive is that the plane apparently did manage to take off at least one more time after this incident. So, which plane was it? In 1990, Iraqi Airways had exactly 4 Boeing 747 airframes. 2 have been stored in Tehran since 1991, with 1 still being in use as a military transport. The other 2 planes have been flown to Tuzeur, Tunisia, and since 1991 just sat there in the desert sand. Which is actually kinda interesting on its own, as people traveling there have the rare opportunity of seeing 2 extremely run-down Boeing 747 passenger planes. One of these 2 planes is the former VIP jet used by Saddam Hussein, and the other one, registration YIAGP, is curiously missing engine number 3. Judging by the authentic video, of which there are at least 2 different digital transfers, as well as the retired plane that fits the description of this attack, it seems plausible that this event really did happen. It is however noteworthy that no record of this exists anywhere, for example in databases of aviation incidents or the aforementioned studies on manpad attacks. Still, a lot of people on blogs and social media in Kuwait seem to remember this happening, or even claim to know the people who perpetrated the attack. And yet, in addition to the St. Petersburg Times article from March of 1991, there seems to be only one other article from an English language journal where this event is even mentioned. It is difficult to imagine something of this magnitude happening today and not being on the news and social media immediately, but this just goes to show that many things used to happen all around the world, and if there is no one to tell us about it, these events are just lost to time.